Alright, before we even start, I need you to understand something. What you are about to see in Diablo 4 is not just another feature, it is not just another system, and it is definitely not just nostalgia being recycled. This is one of the rare moments where a single mechanic has the potential to completely change how the entire game feels. From the way you farm, to the way you look at loot, to the way you build your character. And if you have been playing Diablo 4 for a while, you already know the biggest problem right now isn't difficulty, it is not content, it is the feeling, that moment when loot drops and you just don't care anymore. That moment when everything starts to feel repetitive. Well, this system, if Blizzard actually gets it right, could completely flip that feeling on its head. And if they get it wrong, it might just another system we forget about in a week. So let's talk about why the Horadric Cube might be one of the most important additions Diablo 4 has ever seen. Alright, imagine this for a second. You are deep into Diablo 4 endgame. You have been farming for hours, you are clearing fast, everything is exploding on screen, loot is dropping everywhere, and you don't even slow down anymore. You don't check, you don't hover, you don't even feel anything when items hit the ground. Because at this point you already know how this goes. 99% of what drops is useless. And the only thing you are really looking for is that one tiny upgrade that almost never shows up. So instead of excitement, the game becomes routine, kill, loot, salvage, repeat. And that right there is the problem Blizzard has been trying to fix for a long time now. Because when a loot game stops making loot feel exciting, something is seriously wrong. Now here's where things start to get interesting. Because instead of just increasing drop rates again or throwing another basic crafting system into the game, they are bringing back something that completely changes how you look at every single item that drops. The Horadric Cube. And if you have never experienced it before, it might sound like just another feature, just another menu, just another system layered on top of everything else. But that's not what this is. Because to really understand why people are hyped about this, you have to go back to Diablo 2. Back in Diablo 2, the Horadric Cube wasn't just useful, it completely changed how players approach the game. People didn't just farm for gear, they hoarded everything, gems, runes, random weapons, low level items that looked completely useless. Players picked them up anyway, not because they were good, but because they could become something good. You will finish a run, open your stash, throw a bunch of random items into the cube, hit transmute, and just sit there for a second wondering what you were about to get. Sometimes it was trash, sometimes it was decent, and sometimes it was insane. And that feeling, that moment of uncertainty, that what if, that's what kept people hooked for hours. And that exact philosophy is what Diablo 4 is trying to bring back. Because the core idea behind the cube is simple, but incredibly powerful. You don't farm items for what they are, you farm them for what they can become. You take things that would normally be considered useless, you throw them into the cube, you combine them with other material, and suddenly the game gives you something completely different. Sometimes it is better, sometimes it is worse, sometimes it completely surprises you. But the important part is that every drop now has potential. And that one concept alone completely flips the way players interact with loot. Because instead of filtering out everything that isn't immediately good, you start to think, what if this actually turns into something insane? And this is where Diablo 4 desperately needs help. Because right now the game has a very clear issue with loot fatigue. At the beginning, everything feels exciting, every drop matters, every upgrade feels good, but once you hit late game, that feeling disappears. You stop caring about most items, and the game slowly turns into a checklist instead of an adventure. And the cube directly attacks the problem by introducing uncertainty, by bringing back that feeling of maybe this is something, even when it doesn't look like it at first glance. Because now, even a bad drop isn't truly bad anymore, it is just unfinished. Let me give you a simple scenario to really show how different this feels. Imagine you find a random low tier item, something you would normally ignore without even thinking about it. In the current version of the game, that item has no future. It is either getting salvaged or forgotten, but with the cube, that same item suddenly becomes a starting point. You can upgrade it, modify it, combine it with other pieces, and potentially turn into something that actually fits into your build. And now, instead of ignoring that drop, you pause for a second, you think about it, you consider it, and that small moment of hesitation is exactly what Diablo 4 has been missing. And if you have played Diablo 2 before, you already know how deep this can go. There were recipes people discovered years after launch, combination that nobody expected, optimization that turned average player into absolute monsters. Entire builds existed because of what the cube could create. And you can already imagine what's going to happen when this hits Diablo 4. Day 1, guys everywhere, players testing combination, people breaking the system, finding the fastest way to turn trash into top tier gear. It is going to be chaos, but the good kind. Now, take that idea and push it further, because it is not just about turning bad items into decent ones. It is about creating an entire ecosystem where everything has value. Materials matter more, duplicates matter more, even failed drops starts to feel useful because they contribute to something bigger. And when you start stacking systems like that together, the game stops being about luck alone and starts becoming about decision making. You are no longer just hoping for the perfect drop, you are working toward it, slowly building it piece by piece, and that changes the entire pacing of progression. But here's where things get a little bit dangerous. Because systems like this are incredibly powerful, and if they are not balanced properly, they can completely take over the game. There is a very real possibility that the cube becomes so strong that it overshadows everything else. Instead of farming bosses or pushing content for loot, players might end up spending most of their time in town, combining items, optimizing recipes, and trying to force the best outcome through crafting. And at that point, the game starts to shift away from action RPG gameplay into something that feels more like resource management. And not everyone is going to enjoy that direction. At the same time, if the cube is too weak, the opposite problem happens. Players ignore it, just like they have ignored other underwhelming systems in the past. And it becomes another feature that exists but doesn't really matter. And that's the tightrope Blizzard is walking right now. Because this system has the potential to be one of the best additions the game has ever seen. But it also has the potential to completely fall flat if it doesn't connect properly with everything else. It needs to feel meaningful without being mandatory, powerful without being dominant, and useful without replacing the core gameplay loop. And that brings us to the most important part of all this, which is how the cube fits into the bigger picture. Diablo 4 already has multiple layers of progression, from tempering to masterworking to aspect and enchanting, and adding another system on top of that could either bring everything together or make things even more complicated. But if the cube becomes the central piece that ties all of these systems together, if it becomes the place where your resources, your gear, and your decision all converge, then suddenly the entire game starts to feel more cohesive. Instead of juggling disconnected mechanics, you are working within a system that actually makes sense, where everything you do fits into something larger. And if they manage to pull that off, if they really get this right, then we are looking at a completely different Diablo 4 experience. One where loot is no longer something you ignore, but something you think about. One where every drop has potential, even if it doesn't look impressive at first. One where progression feels earned, not just randomly handed to you. And that's the kind of change that doesn't just improve the game for a few weeks. It reshapes how people play it long term. So yeah, this isn't just another features announcement. And it is definitely not just nostalgia. This is one of the moments where the direction of the game can shift completely depending on how well this system is executed. Because the Horadric Cube isn't just about crafting, it is about possibility. It is about turning nothing into something. And most importantly, it is about bringing back that feeling that every Diablo 4 has been chasing since the beginning. The feeling that the next drop could be the one that changes everything. And before we wrap this up, there is something important you need to know. A full developer update stream for Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred is coming very soon. 23rd of April 2026. Mark your calendar. They are going to reveal the final details, go deeper into systems like the Horadric Cube, class skill trees, the talisman system, new endgame system, and more, and show exactly how everything is going to work at launch. So everything we talk about here is just the beginning. The real mechanics, the real numbers, and the real strategies are about to be revealed. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.